All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Friday Digest. I'm Rebecca Rehr, Director of Climate Policy and Justice at the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. Happy to be here with you all today. So to celebrate April Fool's Day, we're going to have a little fun later with the game of fact or fiction around climate change and environmental justice. But first, we are going to provide an update on something we are not fooling around about, which is the Climate Solutions Now Act. And I'll be joined by Maryland LCV's Deputy Executive Director, Ramon Palencia-Calvo, in just a bit to take a deeper dive on some of the environmental justice components of the bill. But first, I wanted to provide a general overview because a lot has happened in the last week. And just this morning, and not to jump ahead, but just this morning, we were out on Lawyers Mall, thanking and celebrating all of the good news that we have gotten this week. And so if you are on social media, check out the Maryland LCV social channels. It's full of great news from this morning. So not to jump ahead, but definitely follow us on our social channels to get the latest and see what we were up to just this morning. So what happened this week? On Tuesday, the House of Delegates passed an amended Climate Solutions Now Act 95-42 after 4 hours of debate and a number of unfriendly amendments that were introduced and voted down. Then, so because the bill had been amended in the House, it had to go back to the assigned committees in the Senate where they could vote to concur with this new amended version or make changes. So it's back in the Senate. And one thing that was a major consideration was something called presentment. Now, that's not really a word outside of this very specific context, but what it means is the date by which a bill has to be presented to the governor with enough time for the General Assembly to override his veto this session. Timing is really important this session because it's an election year. So you have to be able to override a veto this session. Whereas in other years, you can override a veto first thing the following session. But the fun of an election year is that's not possible. So if the Senate decided to make changes to the bill based on the amended House version, the bill would have then had to go to conference committee, which would have meant extra time before the bill would make it to the governor's desk, which means there might be some issues in timing on the veto override, right? So timing was really important as the bill headed back to the Senate committees on Tuesday. And I know these are a lot of in the weeds, fun details. That's where we are at this point in session. And I will be checking the chat in a bit to see if you have any questions. So make sure you have your questions coming at us in the chat. So ultimately on Tuesday afternoon, the Senate committees decided to concur. So that means they decided to agree with the amended House version of the bill, of the SB 528, the Climate Solutions Now Act. And then the full Senate voted just yesterday, 32-15 to concur with the House version of the bill, ensuring there's enough time to override a veto should that happen. So that was a lot of process, right? So the bill's now on the governor's desk. We're waiting to see what happens. And we are ready to act when it does. And you'll see an action alert in a bit so that you can ask the governor not to veto the bill and take action now to do that. So that was a lot of process, a lot in the weeds, what actually happened this week. But I want to talk a little bit about content too, because we want to talk about what's in the bill and why the bill that's now sitting on the governor's desk would make Maryland a leader. So what's in the bill is that the Climate Solutions Now Act, as it sits on the governor's desk, sets greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets that are among the strongest in the country, with 60% emissions reductions by 2031 and a net zero goal for 2045. It includes provisions to allocate resources for low to moderate income communities and prevent further harm to communities most vulnerable to climate-related impacts. It also launches a pilot program to help more school districts transition their school bus fleets to electric buses with the goal of protecting the more than 650,000 Maryland children who ride to school on polluting diesel buses. The bill also forges a path to transition all of Maryland's state-owned fleet of cars and light duty trucks from fossil fuel to zero emission vehicles. So the state vehicles would all be zero emission, all be electric vehicles. And it also, just wait, there's more. The bill also specifies tax exemptions for community solar projects serving low or moderate income customers, lessening the pressure on our open space and agricultural land while expanding the benefits of solar to underserved communities. And finally, it requires reduced emissions from large buildings 20% by 2030 and achieve a net zero target by 2040. So that is a lot to celebrate. It's Friday, we're going into the weekend, and we should all feel really good about the hard work that it took to get us here, from advocates, from communities, from elected leadership. It takes a lot to make this happen. And this is a strong bill that's sitting on the governor's desk. And we want to say thank you to everyone on the call who's done so much to get us there. And we were out this morning saying a big thank you to elected leadership for everything they did to get us here as well. So it is a time, there's still work to do. There's still work to do, but it is a time to celebrate. We can't forget to celebrate and take time to say thank you and to recognize this achievement. So that's Climate Solutions Now. And so I wanted to, I'm not seeing any questions yet in the chat. So I'm going to dig in on a few of the provisions specifically around environmental justice with Ramon Palencia-Calvo, who's going to answer some questions. Hi, Ramon.
Hello, Rebecca. Hello, everyone.
So I want to start out with a priority for Maryland LCV, the electric school bus pilot program. So that was, now it's something that the language of that bill actually is part of Climate Solutions Now, right? The part of the bill that's sitting on the governor's desk. So tell us a little bit about the process there and why it's a good thing. Why are we celebrating that the electric school bus pilot program is part of this Climate Solutions Act?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Yes, it is a great thing, not a good thing. It's a great thing. You know, it's a step forward in the right direction in protecting children's health, community health. You know, for a number of years, Maryland LCD and our Chispa Maryland program have been spearheading this transition from diesel polluting to clean electric school buses. As you said, 650,000 kids every day ride one of those diesel polluting buses. Let's remember that diesel pollution is the worst, the most harmful for our health pollution from transportation. You know, about 10% of kids in Maryland suffer from asthma, which is the leading cause of absenteeism among among school children, you know, affecting their full capacity to succeed in life, to be successful in life. So those are those are some of those consequences, right? So it is great that it has been included here. Just in a nutshell, what it does is those provisions starts a pilot project in Maryland. It's a partnership between school districts and their utilities, the utilities in their territory, investor-owned utilities. It's an opt-in program, so there's no mandate here. And the way it will work, school districts can participate in this pilot project. We all know that electric school buses are are more expensive than their diesel counterparts. So the utility will cover that difference in price, the sticker price. And but those buses will come with vehicle-to-grid technology. And this is very important because there's a huge benefit in having that technology. The batteries of buses, obviously, they're much bigger. They store much capacity, much more electrons, so they can be fed into the grid when the buses are not being used. And this is good for ratepayers. This is good for bringing more the intermittency of renewables. This is good for the grid. So there's a number of benefits that we still, we have seen in other parts of the country with vehicle-to-grid technology, all the great benefits. So we need to quantify those in Maryland to make sure that we use that properly and we know the real value of the electric school buses. And that's why this pilot project is super exciting, not just very importantly, and not just for the health of community and children, but it's also very, very important because it has that, they can be monetized, those batteries, bringing resources to school districts, and of course, saving a lot of money that can be used in other programs, education, buildings, whatever it is that the school district needs to that extra money. So yes, it is very important. Let me just add one more thing. We might know that there's about $5 billion with a B dollars that from the infrastructure bill, from the federal infrastructure, and for school buses, for clean school buses, $2.5 billion for electric and $2.5 billion for alternative sources. So we can now in Maryland leverage this program to have a competitive edge towards those federal dollars. So I think it's a very, very good provisions, very good program, and yeah, school districts in Maryland really are positioned in a great way now.
Yeah, I think that's two really important points that you mentioned. Cleaning the air really gives kids an opportunity for their lungs to fully develop and for them, therefore, to achieve their fullest potential, which they should do on their way to school, right? So like sort of that, and then making Maryland ready for federal money that we know is coming. That's been a big part of the conversation in Annapolis this year, and a really key aspect of that. So that's great. And so in the bill, another piece, switching topics a little bit, the Maryland Department of the Environment, in consultation with the Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities, has to identify communities that are disproportionately affected by climate impacts. So within that task, there are specific definitions provided for overburdened and underserved communities. So can you tell us a little bit about those definitions? Like, how did they come about, and why is it so important that they're actually written into the legislation?
Yes, that is an important step forward in order to advance environmental justice in Maryland, right? We all know that not all communities suffer the same effects from environmental pollution, disinvestment, climate change, and so on. So it is very important to understand which are the communities that are overburdened by pollution and underserved their infrastructure. So it's been the work of academia, advocates, frontline, fence line communities. So to really come up with those definitions. I remember working with you, Rebecca, back in 2015, if I remember, on cumulative impacts, and try to identify communities. What are those communities that we need to pay more attention to because of those situations? So now we have those definitions of overburdened and underserved. So when there's time to invest in those communities, advance environmental justice, making sure that we bring dollars to the communities for environmental issues and related economic, social, and health issues, we have those communities, we can identify. And so underserved communities, they are defined at a minimum, a community that at least is 25% qualified as low income, 50% non-white, and also 20% residents have a limited English proficiency. We know about limited English proficiency, how that impacts access to services and other related things, right? So that is very important to have identified those communities. We know that those communities have a high rates of adverse health effects. You're talking about heart disease, asthma, diabetes, and also lower health promoting infrastructure, from access to health facilities to perhaps open spaces where they can recreate and they can exercise. So that is very important to have that definition. And broader terms in Maryland, that is about 60% of the population. But now we also have overburdened communities. And overburdened communities are census tracts with 3 or more below some indicators, right? 75% below those indicators, right? The 75th percentile. And those indicators are environmental. They are also health. and infrastructure. So we have another opportunity there by overburdened communities to capture that exposure to those environmental harms and lack of health promoting infrastructure as well. So it's very important to have those definitions, because when we are making decisions that affect our lives, it's very important to understand what are the communities that are underserved and overburdened right now.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And to have it, to remove some of the delay that would have happened if the department has to define all of those things. It's written, now it's written into the bill. So we can get started, on the work that needs to be done.
Exactly. It's a huge step forward. It's already codified, so we can just go right ahead and start running with that.
Right. And it's so important that those definitions came out of a months-long process where communities had input, advocates had input, lawyers had input, researchers had input. So those definitions really came from, folks who are living in those communities as well.
Yeah, exactly. There are a number of bills that dealt with these specific issues, and the folks working on those, and again, academia, affected communities, legislators, advocates got together to hammer them down to make sure that this is codified in a way that makes sense for Maryland. So it's a great victory, I'll say. It's very important. It's a very important step forward.
Yeah, I agree. It was great to see those definitions in the legislation, in the bill itself. Opposition can't say, what do you mean by this anymore? Because that's a really good tactic to delay and to make an excuse for inaction, is by saying, what do you mean by that? And, so we took the time to, lots of people took the time to figure that out, so we could get the work done. Okay, so last question. We were also hoping that there would be more language around Justice 40 in the bill when it came to communities disproportionately affected by climate impact. So this what MDE has to do with the commission. Where it is in the bill is that at least 40% of funding from the Climate Catalytic Capital Fund, which is the green bank created in the bill, is used on projects in low to moderate income communities. But it isn't in the bill in identifying this proportion of state funding that should go to those communities disproportionately affected by climate impacts. Lots of jargon in the bill, as you would expect in such a long bill, but it is in there in one element, but not in the other. So could you just talk to us a little bit briefly about why the Justice 40 principle is so important and why we were asking for more Justice 40 in the bill?
Yes, so Justice 40 comes from President Biden's Executive Order 14008 that tells us that, they're to tackle climate change here in the US and abroad. And it tells us, that there are a number of communities that have been disproportionately impacted by climate change and pollution, and we need to pay attention to those communities. We need to bring resources and invest specifically in those communities. And the executive order says that at least, not 40%, but at least 40% of those investments are to be in those communities, right? And then it gives us a number of categories: climate change, energy efficiency, job training, affordable and sustainable housing, and so on and so forth. There are 7 or 8 programs there. And it is very important that those state and federal dollars on those programs really go to the communities that need it the most, that can benefit the most from those dollars. And that's what Justice 40 does, right? So here in Maryland, we had an effort. There was a bill that really codifies that and goes to the extent, again, to define underserved and overburdened communities according to the definitions that are already in climate solutions now. And it also codifies the programs. What are the programs in Maryland that will be part of this Justice 40 effort based on that federal guidelines? So I think that this is significant. This is very important because we know that those communities are the ones that are, they have the least health promoting infrastructure, as we said. Their, pollution in those communities is much higher than on other communities in Maryland. So it's very important to bring those resources because those communities also have been suffering disinvestment for years. And it is key that we bring that those dollars to those communities, to the communities identified as overburdened and underserved.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not just about not adding additional harm. It's about making sure that there's equitable distribution of benefits, right?
Exactly.
And so, yeah, so for sure. And so thank you, Ramon. That was really helpful to dig in a little bit on the environmental justice components of the bill, because that's, something we made sure to advocate for as changes were being made in the bill, as we were seeing amendments get added. And we were very happy to see things like the definitions make it in, the electric school bus pilot program is in, and we know we still have work to do, and we look forward to working with as the bill gets implemented on making sure those environmental justice provisions stay strong and are implemented. So thanks, Ramon.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So we did get a couple questions in the chat. John asked a couple. So, what got eliminated from the bill? So like I said, there were a lot of changes. One thing, the major thing that we're talking about that got changed is that originally there was an all electrification standards for new buildings, but that was amended to become a study. So the Public Service Commission is now going to conduct a study to see, check out our electric grid capacity and report back on the study, I believe in September. The date got amended a few times, so I think it landed on September of next year on when that study will be put out, and we worked to make sure that study had public oversight and input. But that now, instead of all electrification requirement, it's now going to be studied. So again, there's work to be done here. There's deadlines of years in advance, years in the future, and so we have our work cut out for us in terms of watching the implementation of the bill as well. And so we, are looking forward to educating legislators and candidates and the public with all of you to make sure that, we can ensure 100% renewable energy to power the all electrification of buildings that we want to see. And then the other question was about how will taxes on fossil fuel that support road and bridge construction and upkeep be replaced when electric vehicles become more used? And it's just noteworthy that the Transportation Trust Fund does get its money from the gas tax, but that is only one of its sources. And of course, there needs to be a longer discussion about how we can protect our environment by moving off fossil fuels and also fund the Transportation Trust Fund and infrastructure that it supports. But the lead time in the implementation of some of these provisions gives us the time to do that in a thoughtful manner. And moving off of fossil fuels certainly reduces cost in many ways for many people. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. And because it's April Fool's Day, we want to play a bit of a game. Is there any likelihood that the bill will be vetoed? So before we jump into the game, because this is a really important question, yes, there is a likelihood that the bill will be vetoed. The governor has three options: sign the bill, and then let it go into law. So if the governor in Maryland, if the governor does not sign legislation, the bill goes into law. That's different than federal, where if you don't sign a law, it's vetoed. That's not in Maryland. If you don't sign a law, it goes into law. That would be great. And we gave him enough time to let that happen before the end of session. So he could veto. So sign, veto, or let it go into law. So we're hopeful that the governor will let it go into law, but we are asking him not to veto. So there'll be an action alert that gets into your chat in a second, so you can help make that happen. What you'll also see pop up on your screen in just a moment is a poll. So we're going to play a game of fact or fiction on climate change and environmental justice in the few minutes that we have left. So you're going to see a poll come up on your screen with 6 questions, and I'll give you a minute to take the poll if it's coming up. Maybe. There we go. Oh, these are the poll results. I think we need to... If we can't get the poll up, I think I can just go ahead and read the questions. Are people seeing the poll? No? Okay. We're going to play this way. I will read, oh, there you go. Now you have it. So I'll give you just a minute to take the poll before we jump into the answers. I'm taking the poll myself. Is that cheating because I already know the answers? All right, just one more minute to put your answers in. All right, Kristen, why don't we go ahead and close the poll since I know we only have 2 minutes left. All right, so the first, and then if you could, if you're able to show the results, that would be great. So the first question was, here we go. So climate impacts are mostly environmental, affecting sea level rise and disrupting natural ecosystems. You guys got it. So you're correct. Most of you said it was false. That's true, of course. Of course, climate change does have environmental effects, but it also impacts our health through worsening allergy seasons, heat waves, and air pollution that impacts our heart, lung, and kidney function, among other things. So yeah, that one was false. So the next one, Maryland, ooh, and that one was split like 80-20. Number 2, you guys are super sharp. Maryland has more than 3,000 miles of shoreline, which makes us particularly vulnerable to climate impacts. True, 100% of people said true. So too smart for that one. So yes, that's a fact. We're particularly vulnerable, which is what makes these kinds of policies that much more important. All right, 3, Maryland is too small to lead on climate solutions. What we do here will not make a difference. Oh man, again, 100% say false. All right. So yes, agreed, that is false. So much implementation is happening on the state level for climate and environmental initiatives that what each state does is important, and the steps we take to reduce emissions have immediate health benefits for Maryland residents. So it makes a difference what we do here in Maryland. Don't believe it if you hear otherwise. All right, 4, Maryland would be the first state in the nation to implement a goal of 60% emissions reductions by 2031. Again, split like 70-30. So say true. So 70 say true, 30% say false. In fact, that is, as far as we can tell, fact. Although it is noteworthy that Puerto Rico does have a goal, but not a legislative mandate of 50% by 2025. All right, 5. Environmental justice is a new concept that has come into public discourse alongside racial justice movements like Black Lives Matter. And this one was split 86-14. 86 of you say false, 14% say true. Oh, I'm sorry. That was number 5 on environmental justice. 93% say false, 7% say true. Those who said false are correct. The environmental justice movement is recognized to have started in 1982 in Warren County, North Carolina, in response to a PCB landfill that was sited in a predominantly Black community, although truly has roots in the 1960s civil rights movement. And actually last October, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit, which was held in Washington, D.C., where the 17 principles of environmental justice were put forth. So the environmental justice movement has been around for quite some time. And we are seeing it recognized, you know, on the federal government, on the federal level, and really implementing those on the vision on the state level as well. And finally, number 6, one person can't make a difference. 14% of you say true, 86% say false. So that is false. One person can make a difference. You can make a difference. And the ways that you can do that today, just as an example, are to sign, to take action and ask the governor not to veto climate solutions now. And you can also, of course, donate to Maryland League of Conservation Voters. It's because of you that we're able, that we can do this work in partnership with you. And one person really can make a difference. Your investment of both your time and your resources make a difference in how we see results of climate policy take shape in the state. And so we encourage you to get engaged. You as part of a collective voice with us really make a difference. And that's what we keep hearing from legislators as well. They care about what they hear from their constituents. And so it's really important that they hear from you, and you can make a difference. And that is not a joke for April Fool's Day. That's just the truth. So I hope you enjoyed today's Friday Digest. And I don't see any additional questions. So with that, I just wanted to thank you so much for being here. Kim will be back next week for another Friday Digest, and we hope to see you then. Thank you.